The title of this audio is Corruption in Sex. Out of all the pleasures that a human being can derive, one of the most, probably the strongest, most potent source of pleasure that one can get is in the form of sex. And because the mind happens to seek pleasure all the time, it will naturally go towards where it gets the strongest pleasure. Now, everyone recognizes this because everyone is basically the same human being. Not in some spiritual woo sense that all is one and one is all, but in a literal sense that they all seek pleasure and their mind will go towards wherever they get the most pleasure. Upon the recognition of this truth, what inevitably happens is there are in order for a human being to control access um, to this pleasure only for himself or herself and take it away from others, because obviously why wouldn't the mind want more pleasure? What ends up happening is you start to have illusions that the thing is something more than what it is. So let's say, for example, uh, you know, if I talk about water, right? Every organism who's dependent on drinking water, when they feel thirsty, they naturally, their ingenuity makes them search for water until it's quenched. Now that's things as they are. But when you impose illusions like water is precious, water is nice, water is God, water is everything, this is the healthy amount of water you should drink, this is the unhealthy amount of water you should drink, this is the history behind water, and all other things, all other opinions, all other um, impositions that one makes upon water, they naturally do not see the utility of it for what it is, but they make something out of it. It's the same thing with, I don't know, let's say, someone who wants to have sex, hence he sees having a attractive body attracts girls, so he goes to the gym, then he sees what's the thing that's required to get a good body, that is protein. Then he sees what's the most potent source of protein, then he sees chicken, then he makes brands, then he searches for brands that give poultry, then he eats chicken, and then he on some other animal sees which animal upon petting will be safe enough to not hurt me, but enough for me to hug him, cuddle him, and possess him. Then he'll see, oh, dog is one such thing, and then he'll love dogs. And then he'll see what is the most common prevalent animal that is there, which is worshipped in order to feel good for himself. Then he looks at a cow and then he makes the cow that symbol of, let's say, some ideology. So, in the entire exchange of the chicken and the dog and the cow, the, the, the chicken is the chicken, dog is the dog, and the cow is the cow. They're beings who eat, sleep, repeat, and procreate. That's about it. We as humans, as in the mind, comes along and makes illusions of different kinds. And that illusion is based upon the pleasure that the mind seeks. Hence, the pleasure of sex, then trickling down to pleasure of making body, pleasure of eating protein, fuck the chicken. Pleasure of wanting to possess an animal so that they can pet him and hug him, kutta le aao, ab usko kariye. And the pleasure of being holier than who you actually are. Hence, you join a culture, join a cult, and you preach a religion, and you uh, quote, take the pleasure of pleasing the most commonly accepted animal that is in that tradition. Now, hence the straying away and believing into illusions that these three animals are something more than what they are. They serve some other purpose for what they are. Now, if someone, like I always say in my video, says I am promoting and loving animals, not loving animals, eating animals, not eating animals, praying or not praying, they are premature because they still operate under the mindset what's good and what's bad, and quite frankly, they have been conditioned to not use their own sensibilities to see that good and bad are societal notions. They're not truth. So it's the same with sex. So, like for example, I said about water, that people usually don't have illusions about water. People have illusions about animals, for example. But sex, which is probably one of the biggest sources of pleasure, in order for the mind to have access to all of it for their own self, or basically to maximize the pleasure of that, what they do is they condemn it, they suppress it, they categorize it under the name of a religion. They say this is the healthy amount of healthy age after which you should pursue such and such intimacy. These are the healthy amount of partners you can have. These are the good amount of things that you can say. This is an appropriate amount of body you must have in order to attract the other person. This is the amount of perfume you should spray. These are the clothes and these are the cosmetics, and these are the social posturing norms you must adhere to in order to get this pleasure. When all along, if human beings were just honest, which they can't be, because then how would the business profit off of them if they knew the truth of what it actually is, that we made it something more than what it actually is. Uh, and so then the corruption begins, the corruption in sex. Uh, and then they create plethora of problems simply because they made something more than what it is, in the form of monogamy, relationships, marriage, quote love, romance, movies, aesthetical appearance of a car. आप अपनी बुलेट चला रहे हो तो आप उसमें पीछे स्टिकर लगा रहे हो अपनी कास्ट का, या फिर you're replacing it with a stronger फटफटिया. I don't know what do they do when they rev the engine of the bike. It's basically all just, the society is very good at conditioning human beings to see things, to not see things as they are, because otherwise the people who propagate that illusion, how would they benefit? And the reason they want to benefit is they want to get the pleasure. And again, there is nothing bad about that. I'm not saying corruption is bad and innocence is good. I'm not saying seeing things as they are is good and making illusions is bad. All I'm saying is it is ineffective and practically non-existent for a human being to have any semblance of peace in their life if they live in such illusions. Because when you're buying into an illusion, which are all the ideals that you've made, you'll try to live up to those ideas, which are upon the basis of good and bad, And as soon as you see something as good and bad, you're finished, because you haven't examined the source of where this comes from, and you'll forever try to be good and not be bad. And whatever pleasure that you're seeking, you'll seek it once. That satisfaction won't last beyond a few seconds or minutes, and it'll keep you on the chase for the next pleasure, and you'll devote your entire life uh, based on that pleasure, and you'll be in anticipation for when the next satisfaction will arrive from the next pleasure. And that is how human beings live, under the influence of the mind. um, so for someone who may or may not have resonated, who did not succumb to outrage of the mind upon hearing this, might feel a strong distaste for all the cultural norms and status quo in any endeavor that they might see themselves in. Uh, and they have no choice but to be a part of the society, because this society gives them something called quote money. And even if they get the quote money, after figuring it out how to take it from people, they still have to stay within this society, uh, unless they're naturally willing to go in a cave, which they probably aren't. But for a human being who really seeks to have any semblance of any honest conversation with a human being that has their sensibilities open, for whatever reason, they're all alone. But if illusions is something that one is seeking, they basically have the entire world at their disposal. Uh, and that is the state of affairs I find myself in.